Okay, we're ready to start. Okay, calling to order the Monday, 29 April 2024 Kitsap Public Facilities District Board of Directors meeting. So our first item would be public comment. Is there a public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Zimmers, would you like to come up?
Hello? Oh, okay, thank you. So I know I only have 3 minutes, and that's why I sent you, emailed you several times with a lot of resources and research and comments. So I just want to make a few bullet points tonight. My name is Carolyn Zimmers, and thank you, Director Shiplett and KPFD board members. So I'm here to talk about the PERC, the Poulsbo Events Recreation Center, about the original design with the convention center that received by you the second highest priority. That was in 2019, I believe, when that was first discussed. And the design has changed now to 2 soccer fields with no building. This is a totally different project, and I think it needs to be reevaluated, not just rubber stamped, because it is a different project. And so I think there needs to be a new discussion about whether or not this still is a high priority. The two soccer field option is not what the residents of North Kitsap wanted during the community outreach portion. There were surveys, there were town halls, and there were chats, there were community chats, and I sent you a representative in cloud pictures of what the choices were, and soccer fields are not really prominent in that visualization of what the residents wanted. So another problem I have with the process is the change to soccer fields was made behind closed doors at City Hall when Ms. Boughton met with a number of steering committee members and KPFD director, and I know that Mr. Shiplett did not have any actual input into it, and the mayor to make this decision. According to public record requests, the number of steering committee members was 2, and they were actually not just residents, they were from the planning commission. So it wasn't random citizens helping making this decision. So in early 2022, after 5 community meetings in 2021, a decision was made to change from a community center with meeting rooms that the residents said they wanted to the 2 soccer fields behind closed doors. So I have a problem with that process. It's not democratic, but it's also, when I talked to Mayor Erickson, I tried to talk with Ms. Boughton, but I was not able to do that. So I talked to Mayor Erickson, and I asked her why the steering committee was not reconvened, as was promised at the last meeting in November of 2021. And she said expediency. Now, to me, expediency means there might be a crisis or an emergency, but this was over almost 2.5 years ago that that decision was made behind closed doors. To me, I don't think expediency was necessary. I think that the steering committee in full should have been called back before that decision was made in 2022. I think that to me, the process was flawed, and I even think I could apply the term unethical. Have I reached 3 minutes? Because I'll just stop with my bullet points when I get there.
You have about 15 seconds.
Okay, and parking. Parking is an issue. There's already an issue up there. I think there needs to be an actual plan, and if they're going to park at big box stores for all those cars during the tournaments, I think there needs to be written agreement because there's way more cars than parking available up there. I don't think that there is enough parking, so I think there needs to be an actual plan written down. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, we do not.
Okay, then we will move on to the approval of the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. The consent agenda is approved. And now we'll move on to item 4, which is the City of Poulsbo PERC project update.
Good evening. Good late afternoon. So while Russ pulls that up, maybe pull the click on the thumbnails, maybe close those. There you go. Thank you. So good evening. I'm Carla Boughton, and I am a special projects planner with the City of Poulsbo. And with me tonight, I have a whole crew of city officials and staff that are excited to be here tonight to present to you, hopefully, one of our closing presentations of the Poulsbo Events Recreation Center. So with me tonight is Mayor Becky Erickson, City Council Member Doug Newell, City Engineer Josh Rains, Assistant City Administrator Debbie Boer, and Parks and Recreation Director Jeff Uzamek. It's my pleasure tonight to present to you the Poulsbo Event and Recreation Center. This is a companion presentation to the packet that we prepared for you that I understand that you received late last week. Tonight, I will be presenting over 3 topic areas. Looking back as we move forward, I am going to spend a little time recapping what the feasibility study results were regarding the PERC. City Council considerations and commitment to the PERC that occurred in 2023, and then speak to the proposed funding interlocal agreement that is before you tonight. Looking back, I'm going to show a slide that I know is familiar to you, but I think it's important to set the context of what we're going to talk about tonight. As you know, in 2017, the Washington State Legislature amended the Public Facility District language and extended the period for when sales tax rebates could be applied to projects to 2041. And in result, the Kitsap Public Facility District made a call for projects in 2018. And those projects must meet the definition of the RCW 3557-020 for regional center or special events center, which can be community events, sporting events, trade shows, artistic, musical, theatrical. Provide economic impact, economic uplift to your community must be greater than $10 million in value and must have matching funds from a public partner for no less than 33% of the project. And so as you recall, in 2018, City of Poulsbo was one of 8 projects that were submitted before the Board of Directors in 2018 with presentations in 2019. I put this picture in this slide because this is what the original concept art was presented to the board in 2018 and 19. 2 multi-use fields and an event and recreation center and complementary uses. Those, in fact, were our 3 descriptors for the project. And as you know, we were selected as one of the top 3 projects, and we followed the funding framework that was provided by the KPFD staff on how to proceed. First phase was project concept to project feasibility. Second phase was project development and the preliminary plan. And third phase is final project plan, funding ILA, and contractor selection. So the first and second phase was in fact encapsulated and brought through the feasibility study process. So as you may also recall, our first ILA, PERC ILA number 1, which was in December 2019, was project concept to project feasibility, and it was for about $240,000 to process a feasibility analysis. So that's what we're going to talk. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just giving you the results of the feasibility study. I know that some of that information was in your packet, but I think it's, again, important for the viewing public to walk through with us the feasibility report. So our PERC site is 6 acres of undeveloped property in the northwest corner of the city. It is in College Marketplace. It is immediately adjacent to Olympic College to the north, so it's walking distance, as well as Western Washington University. At the time of our original application, we had a hotel that was coming in. It's now in. It's a 101-room Fairfield Hotel by Marriott. We have Home Depot and Walmart to the south. The hotel is an important piece because it is a piece where we can meet our economic uplift and our economic development criteria by having a hotel so close by to the site. The PERC site was acquired by the city through park mitigation for the Ojeva Master Plan, and has been planned for sports fields since 2000. And it was a determination during the the environmental impact statement and the developer agreement that this property that was given to the city from the developer was to be used in recreational and sports fields. It's been programmed in the city's 6-year capital improvement plan since, again, 2000 as Ojeva Ball Fields, and continues today now under the name the PERC Ball Fields. The property was officially deeded to the city in 2009, but again, it was part of that master plan approval back in the late 90s, and again, showed up on our 6-year CIP in the year 2000. So what is a feasibility study? What is it that you helped us develop for the PERC? Well, it is a tool that informs decision-making of the likely success of a capital facility project, but it's not a decision in of itself. So it's a report. And in determining the feasibility, the PERC report used 4 criteria to determine whether something was feasible. And these are, not only are these very common criteria, but these were criteria that were actually provided to by the executive director to the City of Poulsbo to use when developing the feasibility report. And it's market feasibility, and not just market feasibility, but also market to, does this meet the PFD RCW for economic uplift, site feasibility, operational feasibility, and financial feasibility. So the PERC feasibility report is a compilation of technical analysis and design by 5 professional consultant firms. They were framed by input from the community and steering committee. There's 9 sections and 20 appendices. It was released January of last year. So these are the 5 components of the feasibility study. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each one of those. For the community outreach, we did have a broad-based community survey. In fact, one of our progress reports to you from the very beginning in 2020 was to give you the results of that survey result. And the indoor activity preference was aquatics. The outdoor activity was walking trails. Our recreational programming was adult classes, and our top event center preference was performing arts. We did have a very large community steering committee, of which a board member and the executive director from the KPFD were members of that steering committee. They met 8 times between January of 2021 and March 30th of 2023. They reviewed and commented on all the consultants' work that was presented for the market report and the site options. And then at the Community Steering Committee's last meeting that was held March 30th of last year, they unanimously supported the feasibility study. in the results. So moving to the market analysis, and again, this is important because this is what's going to tell us what the demand is for certain activities at the PERC that can then generate economic uplift. PERC Consulting, which you may be familiar with them, they're a very well-known consulting firm in the Seattle metropolitan area. They were retained to prepare the market analysis. They understood the local and regional demand for the potential PERC components, and what that was tournament fields, aquatic facilities, and an event center. They estimated the potential demand for indoor-outdoor recreation meetings and events. The market analysis, and as you can expect, these are very quick summary statements. I know you have all the information to these studies. You might have even gone to look at them. They're on our PERC website, and they were certainly more fleshed out in the feasibility report. Community members are very strongly interested in the PERC, as you would expect, and as I'm sure you're experiencing with all of your KPFD projects. The PFD, as a PFD funded project, the PERC must draw outside visitors as a regional destination. That is one of the requirements under your RCW. The PERC is not going to be able to meet everybody's needs and interests, and they need to focus on a few key components. So here's the conclusions of the PERC market study. The aquatics, indoor aquatics is a saturated market. If we were to pursue an aquatic center, it must differentiate itself with unique features. It's expensive to build and maintain. The steering committee concluded that perhaps a warm water recreational outdoor pool would be an important feature that we could continue to pursue. The tournament fields, the PERC concluded that you would need to have at least 2 tournament fields on the site to be a competitive facility. And then we could become a regional and state tournament destination when combined with a suite of fields with North Kitsap School District and Central Kitsap School District to market as a regional and state tournament destination. They found that with the 2 fields on the site, as well as a combined marketing approach with the school district, that it does meet the requirement of a public facility district special event sporting facility. And then finally, in the event center, the PERC event spaces need to be designed as adaptable multi-use facilities. That was collaborated by the steering committee, who said that they wanted to see the same thing in an event center. But the event market space is very competitive. It is very difficult in North Kitsap to compete with the Clearwater Casino. So there was a lot of doubt around whether the PERC event center could compete with them. And that there would be further market testing necessary to determine feasibility if we were to pursue an event-only building. So moving then to concurrently, while PERC was reviewing this doing their market analysis, the architect that was hired to do the site analysis had a series of meetings with the steering committee, which I'm going to summarize a number of the meetings quickly for you. But at the very first meeting, which was June 10th of 2021, we start off by the consultant saying the final uses desired are going to be based on site availability and costs, right? It's a 6-acre parcel. We already know going in it might be tight to do all the things that we want to do, which is part of what this feasibility study in process helps us do. So ARC presented programming ideas and a site analysis to the steering committee to get their initial feedback. At our next meeting, July 15th, it was the same theme. We must determine what our program desires are, and we're going to refine those and perhaps cut those back based on costs and the site constraints. And that graphic was presented to the steering committee at that meeting and discussed about what that means. So at the July 15th meeting, 3 options were presented to the steering committee. Option 1 was 2 fields with parking and a restroom concession building. Option 2 and 3 are basically the same, just different orientations on the property, but it's one field with 3 options for building size, an outdoor pool, like we talked about, the steering committee thought perhaps an outdoor recreational pool could be feasible, and some ancillary uses on the property and parking. So those 3 options were presented to the steering committee on July 15th. At the next meeting, and based on the feedback that was received there, which again I'm not going over but is fully disclosed in your feasibility study, at the next meeting the landscape architect Bruce Dees and ARC architects presented this site plan for consideration. It has no fields, it has a building, and it has pickleball courts and basketball courts, a walking path, an outdoor pool with a lazy river, and restrooms and lockers, and then the on-site parking.
What are the numbers around the perimeter?
Those refer to parking spaces.
Number of parking spaces.
Yep, exactly. Good question. So the steering committee considered that option, and honestly, there was a number of people liked it, and a number of people were like, but where are the fields? Because the fields, again, were part of the original proposal. So I would say that while there was support for this at the steering committee level, it was a mixed bag. It wasn't 100% consensus. At the next meeting, which is really where I think the steering committee made it clear to the city what its opinion was at the November 9th. So this meeting was September 9th. So at November 9th, we had ARC take that site plan and do a cost estimate of it. And it came back at $42 million for that project, for those 3 elements, the site development, and the field, or the fields meaning the field, that one field, and outdoor recreation, the event and recreation center, and outdoor aquatic facility. And again, these are $21. Now, I am including a slide here that summarizes the comments because I do want you to know that the steering committee did give direction to the staff on what to do with that design. And first of all, a comment we heard was the loss of the tournament fields. We also heard that it was too expensive. And a lot of the people on the steering committee were also city residents, so they were concerned about what's the financial strategy, what impact is this going to have on city residents and other city services. They asked about, is there a possibility to get some additional land so we can do all the things that we want to do? But there was a number of comments regarding, can you phase this project? Can you phase this project and have the different phases be standalone? So phasing was introduced at the November 9th, 2021 meeting by steering committee members as a potential path forward to maybe still do all the things, but do it over time and as funding became available. So after the November 9th meeting, one of the things that the city did was it listened to its steering committee, and it identified a 9-acre parcel immediately to the west of the PERC that might be available for purchase. And so the city did actually work on about 7 months with the property owner's attorney and did a number of, we entered into a due diligence contract with them. The city council approved moving forward with the purchase. We actually made an offer to the property owner to purchase that property, and the property owner declined at that time. I think the door still may be left open, but at the time, which was in 2022, they declined the offer for the city to purchase the property. So now we're back to, okay, we don't have the additional land. We must figure out what to do on 6 acres. And then that's where the feasibility report and the information that's come back from our consultants was very helpful. And we looked at then these things. The market feasibility, what did PERC Consulting tell us was feasible on there? Well, the only thing that came out without further testing was 2 tournament fields. So we could further test the event center and we could further test, the outdoor pool. But what we did know at that moment in time was 2 fields was economically feasible for the PFD criteria. We know from the site feasibility of 3 options that was on that previous slide that we can fit 2 fields on there, or 1 field and a building of different size. And we wanted to remember what the initial intent of what that property donation was to the city. It was for recreational purposes and identified 2 sports fields back in the late 90s for this property. And finally, what was the PFD expectation of the PERC project? And what is the likely KPFD financial contribution to the PERC at that time in 2022 and mid to 2022, you guys were working with your financial advisors and we're getting a clearer picture on what you might be able to offer to the PERC project, which at that time was told to me between $10 and $12 million. So we had a clearer picture on what could be the PFD's option, or I'm sorry, PFD financial contribution. And so it was, So based on that information, and again, moving forward, the feasibility study component, the project was phased into 3 phases, which keeps all elements of the PERC in that September 9th, that September 9th steering committee, but with the 2 fields. So phase 1 is multi-use tournament fields, 2 turfed and lighted tournament fields with outdoor recreational amenities, picnic shelters, bleachers, storage, parking. Again, this is consistent with the city's park mitigation since 2000, not 2020, but 2000. And it was consistent with our proposal to you. Our proposal in that first concept art showed 2 fields. The Event and Recreation Center is might be modified to be less event and perhaps more recreational with recreational programming out of it, and to be supportive of the nearby Olympic College on Western Washington University campus, which I'm going to talk a little bit more at the end of my presentation, and then the outdoor recreational pool. Now, I want to speak a little bit about phasing capital projects. I think probably some of you or all of you have experience doing capital projects in your professional life, but I just want to speak that phasing capital projects is not unusual and is actually a very common approach to, and reasonable approach to public facilities. And so this slide walks through a couple benefits to phasing. First of all, again, it was identified by both the steering committee and, in fact, the Poulsbo City Council at a number of our check-in meetings had talked about a phased approach. It continues to move forward the 2018 to 2010 concept. I really want to emphasize no element has dropped out from the original concept. It is phased, but no element has dropped out. And in fact, we added an outdoor recreational pool that we think will actually be a regional destination. It allows time to determine funding for each of the phases for the 42 plus at this point plus million dollar project. It allows each phase to be standalone, and it presents that the city and the KPFD financial capability can move forward with phase 1 now. It fits in both your financial capability and the city's. And we really do phase all of our larger capital projects. And I just wanted to give you an example of, we have a road project that is a number of miles long, and it's broken into 3 phases, and we've developed the first phase and we're working on the second phase. Right now it's actually going to be under construction this summer, and then while that is getting under construction, we start planning for the 3rd phase. So phased capital projects is something we're super familiar with. We do it on most of our larger projects, and we completely intend to do it for the PERC. So phase 1 is tournament fields, as I walked through, soccer, lacrosse, football, ultimate frisbee, summer camps. But it's not just fields. It really incorporates all the outdoor recreational features from that September 9th design. And we actually challenged the landscape architect with that. We're like, okay, figure out, can you do the 2 fields on there and keep everything the steering committee said they really liked at their September 9th meeting. So it has walking trails that connect to Olympic College, Western Washington. It connects to the west. We have a road end to the west and then a trail connection there. Connects to the sidewalk system in Ojeda that then connects to our Finn Hill shared use path. We have a playground programmed in there, a splash pad that's incorporated into the entry plaza. We have 6 sports courts, so again, the pickleball courts and a basketball court. And they're actually going to be designed with material that can be driven on, so we can have outdoor, we can have food trucks to be on that, and we can have that space also be for outdoor concerts and for other special events. So it's not going to be just soccer. It can have multiple uses, and we also understand that that is going to take some special design and some special consideration with the turf to be able to accommodate that, and we're already thinking about that. And then there's seating areas throughout the site. So with the exception of the aquatic center, it's captured every single thing that we were able to identify on the PERC site on that September 9th, with the fields, but of course without the building 2, which will be phase 2. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So here is our picture of what the PERC, here's our site plan for the PERC with pictures of what we envision. This is our vision board of what the PERC could look like. It is on our website, and it's being, put it out there for what we think can happen at the site, not just the 2 fields. So I'm going to go quickly over this slide. I have but to complete the story, there was an operational and maintenance chapter of the feasibility study, and this was actually very important to the City Council, because as you know, this facility will be owned and maintained by the City of Poulsbo, and so they were very interested in, like, okay, how are we going to own and maintain this facility? So we actually spent a lot of time with the City Council on the operational maintenance component of the feasibility study. And then again, our preliminary cost construction estimates in 2021 showed an $11.7 million for phase 1, which would have that 67-33% funding split. Phase 2, event and recreation center at $20 million, and the outdoor aquatic facility between $7 and $10 million. So is the PERC feasible? The answer is the PERC is feasible for phase 1. We have demonstrated through the PERC consulting reports that there is market feasibility. There is site feasibility in that site plan that I just showed you with the pictures along the side of our vision board. We've determined there's operational feasibility with consistent maintenance and designated capital replacement reserves financial strategies. And there are some staff duties that will increase, primarily in our Public Works Department and our Parks Department, where you would expect them to increase. And there is financial feasibility. We've worked hard in the last year to determine what our financial feasibility is, and I'll talk about that in a minute, as well as you guys have determined with your financial advisors and with your executive director what your financial feasibility is for all of your partner projects, not just ours. So turning now to what the City Council did in 2023, they had a very important meeting on April 19th, which that PowerPoint was included in your packet. And at that meeting, they were asked, after walking through in much more detail than I just gave you, the feasibility report, its components, every step of the way, what does the City Council want to do? And they were given 3 choices of which from staff, and they could have come up with more, but these were just to start the conversation was, do you want to move forward with the PERC? If no, we're done, and we can, report back to the PFD that we're not going to move forward with the PERC. If you want to move forward with the PERC, do you want to do all 3 phases at one time? If yes, then we have to change course slightly, and what we're going to do is we're going to re-engage the consultants for additional operational feasibility and market feasibility. We're going to pursue additional land because we need to have the tournament fields, and we need to find an additional parcel for the event center and the outdoor recreational pool. We're going to update the cost estimate, because again, that was $2021. This meeting was in 2023. And we're going to need voted debt to afford this. Or do you want to move forward with phase 1, move forward with the phased approach to your capital facilities that you do in most of your large capital facility projects? And if that is a yes to that, then City Council, what we'll do is we'll start working with the PFD for a funding ILA, and you'll need to work with the mayor and the finance director with including it within the city's budget. At the conclusion of the meeting, the City Council supported the phased approach. So that is the decision point. They made this decision on April 19th. But you know what they decided? They said, move forward with phase 1 and let's figure out who we can partner with phase 2, because we want both. And we think actually Olympic College and Western Washington University would be really good partners for our phase 2. So that was the direction the City Council gave the city staff. And then after that April 19th meeting, they had a number of additional meetings in 2023. We had a second PERC workshop on August 16th, where we spent most of that time talking about the operationals and maintenance considerations that the city needs to think of. They worked with the finance director and the mayor through the budget process and talked about the PERC on September 13th and October 14th during their capital improvement program budget planning. They approved a resolution on November 1st that solidified the phased approach into those 3 phases, and they then finally adopted the city budget on December 13th. But I do want to talk about phase 2 and that building, because I know it's come up. I know there's some of you have questions about that, and certainly it's come up in public comment. But again, I want to kind of just do a few highlights here. Based upon the market feasibility, we are unsure whether an event center is actually market feasible with the 15-minute drive to the Clearwater Casino. But more important than that, what we heard from the community is we actually want a recreation and community programming for phase 2. And so that may not fit with for the PFD special event criteria, because what they really want to see is, a place to go to walk indoors, have programming, have a place to meet. Certainly would have meeting rooms, but maybe it wouldn't be an event center. We know that there's financial feasibility, or we believe, it's our understanding that the financial feasibility of the KPFD is maximized with the tournament fields and in the funding ILA that's coming before you tonight. So the City Council remains committed to phase 2, but we need partners. So one of the important things to our City Council is, well, can Olympic College and Western Washington be partners? So we're at the beginning stage of that relationship and that discussion, but there's already been a couple things that have happened. First of all, the city staff, our city members, city council members, mayor, staff, Olympic College president and his staff, and Western Washington University staff toured the YMCA of the University of Washington Tacoma in November. And this was to get a concept of what would a recreational community facility look like that could support the college's right across the street. And this YMCA facility could be a model for PERC Phase 2, and that it has done that. It's a fitness center, it's a recreation facility, and it has the student body offices. It has components where students can go and hang out and plug in their laptops and study. It has a child watch component to it. So it could be a model, or at least an inspiration for what Phase 2 could look like. And then as recent as last week, we met again to talk about these partnerships for what Phase 2 could look like. And why this is actually more meaningful now than perhaps it was a couple years ago is, you probably know, you've probably heard in the newspaper, is things are actually happening with Olympic College at the Poulsbo campus. They have received federal dollars as well as some state, significant federal and state funding to expand their current healthcare programs, which is 7, to an additional 10 new programs, and to move all of those programs to the Poulsbo campus. So right now, the Olympic College has a consultant that's looking at a 60 to 80,000 square foot health science building that could include all primary care clinic, classrooms, multidisciplinary simulation and labor environments, and office spaces. Concurrently, Western Washington University has received federal and state dollars to build their own building where they can have their programming, and that includes expanding creating a new cybersecurity range, addition of brand new programs that they do not offer currently, as well as enhancing their current programs and introducing some master level degree programs. So this is super exciting, of course, for the city, and the city council and the mayor are very excited about this. But does this provide an opportunity for the PERC Phase 2 to be incorporated into their campus expansion plan? We think so, and they think so too. So while I can say the discussions are very preliminary, there is great opportunity here for Phase 2 to be real, to be incorporated into what they're doing there, and to have a facility that supports our community, provides recreational programming, and can also provide a student space for the significantly expanded programs that are being planned for that, for the Poulsbo campus. So finally, I'd like to talk about what's actually on your agenda tonight, which is the proposed interlocal agreement. And in January of this year, we met with your executive director and your executive committee to discuss the framework of what that ILA could look like. We provided the first draft after that meeting, and the PFD staff, both of our attorneys and city staff continue to work and revise. And I want to note that it was very collaborative, and it was, even though we had a number of versions, Brian and Russ were so excellent to work with, and we really had a great experience making sure it said what you needed it to say and what we needed it to say. Our financial advisors were consulted and brought in on meetings to discuss it with us and answer questions. And then the executive committee reviewed it prior to this meeting. We understand that this is your first funding ILA and you want to get the details right, and we want to do that too, and we're happy that we were able to spend that extra time to do that. And so we're excited that that you have the ILA for your consideration tonight. A couple highlights of that, of the ILA. I put this in the letter that came with your packet, but the cost estimate is it's been raised from the feasibility study to $13 million to address $2025. We understand the maximum amount the PFD can contribute towards the PERC is the $10 million, $2.78 million, which is inclusive of interest amortized over the 16 years to year 2041. And then we have 3 attachments to the ILA that address the different tasks. The first task is the $1.5 million to hire a consultant to get to bid documents. And in fact, we are moving on that. We actually had interviews on those consultants last week. Task 2 is $100,000 for the financing and bond issuance costs, and task 3 is then the $11.4 million of construction costs. And then we have a attachment that shows amortized payments through the year 2041 for you and then 2046 for the city. So I understand there might be some questions about the timeline, so I wanted to include this slide to you, and I'm almost done, I promise. So thank you for bearing with me for what I'm hopeful was a comprehensive presentation on the PERC and how we got here tonight. So we are before you tonight looking for a funding ILA. Upon a successful approval, hopefully by the board, we will bring it to City Council. We have, like I said, we have interviewed our consultants, the engineering firm consultants for PS&E, which is development of 30, 60, 90 design drawings. We will be able to get them under contract very quickly. The permitting can begin as soon as we have a 30 or 60% drawing for the land use permitting component of it. The funding structure will happen later in this year. We'll release bid documents in January. We'll select our construction contractor based on that, hopefully in February, early March. We'll issue the bonds. The city will issue the bonds, as you know, and then we will break ground hopefully in about a year from today. We will be all standing at the PERC breaking ground. So at this point, I'd like to call up Mayor Erickson, who will conclude our presentation.
My conclusion is really very short. I want to say, first of all, thank you very much to Rush, who worked diligently with the staff in order to bring this information to you tonight, the ILA. I want to thank my city council, represented by Doug Newell, who is here today. The council has been deeply involved in this project for a very, very long time. And of course, the staff, Carla, you're a hero, Josh, Deb, Jeff. It's been a huge undertaking for the City of Poulsbo from a staff perspective. And of course, I want to say thank you to you for being diligent and sticking through this very long project. I'm remembering those days in the hotel down in Silverdale and the raucousness, between the Port Orchard project and this project, and this has been a very long time coming. Yes, we had a pandemic in the middle of it, but we at the City of Poulsbo don't quit. When we commit to do something, we do it. And we've done very large projects and been very successful at them. And it's because we plan carefully and we're thoughtful about the directions that we go. And we don't quit. When we set out to do something, we do it. And I am just very grateful that the PFD is entertaining to be a partner with our city. Pretty proud of our little town, and I'm also pretty proud of the Public Facilities District. The things that you've built in Poulsbo before are well used and deeply enjoyed by all of North Kitsap. So, once again, just thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and please support the ILA. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
So we're available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks for that presentation. I enjoyed getting a kind of a clearer picture from Poulsbo's perspective. I just have a few questions just to kind of clarify from your end, because I have some thoughts on the ILA that I'd like to see. As you guys may remember me, I am an attorney, and I just normally in any basic agreement, I'd normally put in an attorney's fees provision. We have the governing law, that kind of thing. Was there a reason there's no attorney's fees provision that says if there's a dispute between PFD and Poulsbo, there shouldn't be, but down the road, if there is, prevailing party gets attorney's fees? I just wasn't sure if there was any internal discussions between our council, your council, the city, and all.
No, there was not, Director Havers, and it wasn't mentioned either by our legal counsel or by the city's legal counsel.
Okay. That would just be one thing. And then I think a big concern I have, and this isn't limited to this project, it's kind of on all of those. I wasn't involved in the original, I guess I call it a beauty pageant or so, but and that is having a firm deadline in place that basically says, because what we don't have, I saw your timeline and I think it looks good. I don't know how realistic it is in terms of permitting, being there. In my experience, sometimes permitting is where you kind of get the bottleneck, but is having a deadline just, you've heard objections from some members of the public. So sometimes I don't know if that triggers people saying, it sounds like you're pretty definitive of where you want to go right now and what the decision is, but I just hate to be back here in a year's time saying, well, we've revamped and we've put it out for another public discussion, and so it's another year out. And as I said, this isn't limited to this project, but some of the others where there are no deadlines really, and it's this open-ended, well, we've committed the money, but how long? And there are other good projects. So everything I've seen in this is talking about 2025. And if there were a drop-dead deadline by which this thing is to break ground, I know you've estimated the spring, but say a fall deadline to drop dead or funding goes away, would that be reasonable from your perspective?
I guess I'll just point that there is a term of agreement date. Okay, so you're not talking about that.
I'm talking by when construction is going to start, allowing for a cushion because there may be, hiccups with permitting or something, but City of Poulsbo says if you were to tell the PFD that this is our drop dead date by which we are starting boots on the ground construction, or we potentially lose the remaining funding that hasn't been spent up to that point, what would be a reasonable date in your mind?
Well, I mean, I think we put what our reasonable dates are in our mind, especially on attachment C, so showing that we'll be doing design PS&E in 2024, we'll be finishing that in 2025, and beginning construction in 2025, and then completing construction in 2026. In fact, we even assigned dollar amounts for each of those years. So I guess I would say this is the city's best estimate, the most reasonable estimate that we are presenting to you, in certainly as outlined in attachment C. And, you know, I don't know what else to say.
I guess, and maybe I'm not phrasing the question right, I understand these are estimates, but if we were to say we wanted to do an amendment to the ILA to say if construction has not started, substantial construction has not started by not the spring, because I want to give you guys a cushion because of these deadlines, you know, September of 2025, that would be a reasonable cushion in your mind?
So okay, so it sounds like what you would like to have something put in that has a date that if we haven't started by construction by, the ILA it terminates.
Correct.
Okay, so what we have identified now is the December 2027 date, so you would want to change that section of the ILA, it sounds like. Is that?
December 2027 by which you start construction?
By completion.
Completion.
We're willing to make the statement here publicly that we will be in construction by December of 2025. Doug, you're my witness? Yeah.
Okay.
2025.
So, I mean, if that helps the PFD to have a statement in there, we will agree to it.
Give you a little bit of a cushion.
We will be under construction by December of 2025. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to clarify a little bit more then on that too. So are we going to amend something that says we will be in construction by December 2025, or else we all sit down and talk about this again?
Correct, we will.
Okay, all right, and as long as you're comfortable with December 2025. Okay, and then I have two silly questions. When you call it turfed, is that artificial or natural grass?
Yes, thank you. That's actually a good question. No, we are going to have artificial turf fields. We have actually one of the criteria for our consultants was their expertise in turf fields. They are going to be lighted, and they're going to be open 7 days a week till 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And then PS&E consultant. I'm guessing the E is engineering.
I know.
PS.
I forgot to ask Josh what that meant. So.
Josh, what does it mean?
There you go. Plan, specs, and an estimate. So it's the plan, specs, and estimate. So it's 30% design, 60% design, 90% design. Bid document is what you use then for a contractor to take a look at and estimate the construction cost of each of the elements.
Okay.
And we're going to do what's called bid alts, where we'll ask them to give us estimates for each component too, so we know what it is collectively and what each component is going to cost.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, of course.
Doug, come up here. Doug, I'm going to brag on my council. Doug is the gentleman that did most of the construction for Central Kitsap School District. So tell him what you said about the deadlines.
Following up, Phil, on Aaron and Darren, I know quite a few of you. Just for be more precise, we're willing to put inside the LA, or at least the city is, I'm just the council member, that we will have the contract awarded to a general contractor by December of 25, but they will still need to mobilize and stuff. So hopefully we have the contract awarded in April or May, and they're mobilizing in May. But just to give us back to the word was the cushion, we can't control when they actually mobilize. Does that make sense? That we will have a signed contract for construction by December of 25.
Yeah, I mean, from construction side, I understand that. So really what we're looking at then is adding like a year on. So instead of saying the ground would break by December.
So I think the schedule had us going out to bid in February or March with award to happen in April. That's what our proposed schedule is. But we want to put teeth into the proposal in case something happens. We're saying that, you know, we might need a 6-month cushion to get that contract under award.
I mean, wonder if we go out.
We're not, I guess, conversely, not comfortable saying that we will have contract awarded in March.
No, I get that.
That's
So
a little tight.
really, instead of like Phil had suggested December, maybe we're talking about May 2026 instead of May 2025 as that.
If we want to term it to when groundbreaking would occur,
yeah.
I know we can, as a city, can control when the contract gets awarded. We're not always good at when the groundbreaking occurs.
Yeah, I totally understand that one, especially with weather.
Yes.
But and that's why we're asking for a comfort level. And as
Yeah.
Phil said, this is not just PERC. You're just the first one we're coming.
Right, and I think it's a reasonable ask.
It is.
At
It
this
is.
standpoint,
We need to have something that-
we need,
Yeah.
we want, as you heard the mayor say, we want to go. And we are ready to go. One of the things we have is the ability to walk across the hall and talk to our planning department to get our permits.
Yeah, if you guys can't get permits, we're all really in trouble, yeah.
We're turning on most of our permits in 60 days right now, so we have that ability internally.
Right.
That's not the issue, but we can't control
Right.
we can control when we let it, but we can't control as much after we let that bid.
So the question still goes back to then, are you comfortable with a date that says
We will let the contract by December.
you will break ground by May 2026? Or Doug's
yes.
giving a thumbs up.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
rather than
It'll be
December-
sooner than that, trust me, but yes.
Oh, yeah, no, understood.
But no matter what, though, when you break ground, the contract, the ILA is done on December 31st of 2027, right?
The ILA.
So it's in your benefit to get this done sooner before the ILA is expired.
Right. Okay, so I think what I heard is break ground by 2026.
Well, that's what we're calling okay, I'm trying to think of something that I want recorded. It will break ground, or else we all have to come to the table again, because the ILA void is terminated, yeah. So that we can't be having this conversation in 2029,
Right.
still, with the same ILA. We have to revisit the whole thing, so.
I don't think we could, though, because the ILA is done in 2027.
Unless amended.
Okay.
Yeah, unless amended. I
That's
mean,
a good
it's-
point. So we already have an end date on the ILA.
Yeah, it says it ends, when the fields are completed, or December 31st of 2027, it's just done.
Oh,
Unless amended.
Yeah, so you can't come back in 2029.
Right. Unless amended.
right.
Correct.
Understood that.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
I have a question about phases 2 and 3, and I appreciate you don't have sites for either of those phases as yet. Do you anticipate coming back to the PFD for funding for either of those two once you nail down the site?
Well, my understanding is that with your financial commitments to your other partner projects, that you are fully funded to the year 2041 with those commitments. So as today, we do not anticipate coming back and asking for additional funding. However, if something was to change with your other funding partners, we may, but today we understand that there is not additional funding, and we would not be coming back with it if you are moving forward with the funding structures that you have with your other projects in Port Orchard and your Kitsap County project.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Boughton. Very comprehensive. I think that was a great word to use. I have a few follow-up questions. Do you today have MOUs, or what type of agreements do you have with the North Kitsap and Central Kitsap school districts for those more regional tournaments, I believe is what you were talking about? What agreements exist today?
So we do have an agreement with the North Kitsap School District to use their fields for City of Poulsbo programming as available, and so this would be a continuation of a relationship that we already have and have had for many years with North Kitsap School District. We do have a letter of interest that's in the feasibility report as an appendix, so you might not have actually seen it, but it is posted on our webpage in case you want to see it, from the Central Kitsap School District athletic director saying that they would be very interested in entering into a marketing program with the City of Poulsbo and the North Kitsap School District. So again, they would control the usage of the fields, but it would be coming together with these three organizations to market our fields as a regional destination. So they have expressed interest in pursuing that with the city and with the North Kitsap School District.
Okay, thank you. Additionally, along that same line, what level, and I think you kind of said it was still preliminary, what do those commitments look like with OC and Western Washington, and or when can we expect a resolution on those so that we can make a decision on this ILA?
Well, that would be for phase 2. So this ILA.
So that doesn't, none of that would be contingent upon phase 1. Okay.
Yep.
Only phase
yeah, and that's one of the benefits of taking a phased approach is each phase can be standalone. And so phase 1 is standalone. That is before you today. But I do want to take a quick opportunity to say Olympic College and Western Washington are very excited about the opportunity of what the PERC phase 2 could be for their student body. But they are very, very embroiled in their own campus planning right now. And so while they are excited about the opportunities with it, they also are working towards some federal and state deadlines that they have for their funding. But we do believe that there's a very real possibility.
Yeah, that's a fun part of the process, if you can remember, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and help me understand, I think, because I looked at several maps, and I had additional questions, but a later map kind of answered one of them. Where on the map is that phase 2 or the pool going to be? That's not on the existing site, correct? That you'd have to acquire more land for that?
Yeah, so in addition to acquiring more land for phase 2, we would need to for phase 3 as well. And so phase 2 might be incorporated into a campus site design, but we are actually still very interested in the property to the west that we tried to purchase in 2022. The property owner did not sell it to a developer. She's decided to stay on the property, and we have communicated that the city would still like to buy the 9 acres. It would be a fantastic West Side Regional Park, and it could be a site for for amenities, including a phase 2 amenity, our phase 3 pool. So again, phase 1 is on our currently owned site, but there is opportunities for sure.
Okay. And I heard mention, I just know I deal with this in my city, around parks or lack of. There was talk about a parks district. How many parks FTE does the city have today to fulfill the maintenance of this new facility?
Yeah, so that was, I might have Jeff come up as our Parks and Rec director, but we did
hey,
Parks FTE.
That's a step, you got a director.
And Public Works was included in the operationals element of the feasibility study. And so actually, if you were super curious, like it's in that section, and it does evaluate each of the departments and what responsibility would be. The programming and scheduling of the parks would be most likely absorbed by the special event coordinator in your department, but I'm going to let you speak to it. But the results of it was we might need a 0.5 to 0.75 FTE from Public Works to do maintenance during tournaments, busy tournament weekends. But again, we'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Carla. Good evening. We would need a couple more staff, as Carla was saying, mainly a 0.5 FTE. So with tournament fields, there's going to be more use. But the good thing is we already manage parks. We already manage facilities. And so there's leveraging of, we already have these other facilities. Adding this on complements our existing staff, and we just have to expand our staffing appropriately. I don't know if that answers your full question.
Yeah, and then I'm just curiosity killing the cat here, rep from another city who doesn't have a parks department. So you have one. Kudos to a smaller city who has that. How many FTE do you have in your parks department?
So we have a Parks Department and we have a Public Works. So Public Works takes care of our mowing, our maintenance work, and their FTEs are about 3 that do, and that's the ground level folks, and then you have your supervisors and your superintendents on top of that. On the Parks and Recreation side, we have a full-time programmer, special event coordinator. We have a Parks and Trails coordinator where we really work on leveraging our volunteers, significant thousands and thousands of hours of volunteers. So we really stretch the dollar to serve our community, and we're pretty darn municipally honest. We're quite proud of that.
That's awesome for a city smaller than mine. Kudos to you all there. And then there's money in your CIP for this as well, I assume?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So that was part of our 2023 work that the City Council did, was to identify the funding source, and yes.
So your biennium budget must be on a different cycle.
And we are ready to move forward.
Awesome. And then my last one is just around phase 2. I believe Ms. Zimmers brought it up earlier around the difference between where we are today versus when this project was presented. And I wasn't a part of this board at that time. And so when do we anticipate, or what is the current plan, and could we write that into the ILA just so that the PFD has some guarantees that phase 2 is going to come to fruition, right? Because if I'm sitting here and I'm Bremerton, who literally had a couple of sports fields as their project, and they got ranked dead last. I just want to make sure that we take that into account in moving forward, that phase 2 is going to happen. So if we had a date, or we knew how many years out, so that we could have that as part of our ILA, what would that time frame look like?
Well, again, it takes additional land and some additional funding partners. My understanding from the KPFD is that you cannot contribute to the funding of phase 2. Is that no longer correct understanding?
I think as it exists today, we didn't get across the finish line down in Olympia this last session because it was a short session, but we are looking to extend the date at which the sales tax rebate continues to come to PFDs across our state. I anticipate that to get done next year, but again, you can anticipate all you want in Olympia, and I'm sure you guys know how that works. And so we think so, but we don't know.
Well, the City Council is as interested as it appears you are in phase 2, and in their resolution that they passed last year, they had a statement that they wanted to continue to work forward with phase 2 and to, again, look for partnerships in Olympic College and Western Washington University. And certainly if it sounds like that the KPFD would like to continue to be a partner for phase 2, we certainly would be happy to put something in the ILA that says that, if you as a board want to do that. I don't know if I can tell you what year that's going to happen, but I certainly believe within the next 4 to 5 years, we will be looking forward to it. So again, my understanding up until this very moment was that phase 2 was not financially feasible for the PFD. If you're telling me it might be, we certainly would entertain that conversation.
Okay, so I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea, because I've seen the ILA, I have some thoughts, and we'll discuss that, I think, when we move there, but I would like some input, because I think one of the things I'm going to advocate for is an amendment to that says, hey, if we don't move on, and that's what I'm looking for, if it's a 10-year period, right? Okay. In the next 10 years, that there's a payback for those dollars, because we wanted to see this project, right? Again, I'm looking at and bearing what Bremerton put up versus what we're getting today, and if in all fairness, right, and I understand the feasibility part, and everything can't happen all at once, and that you're phasing the project, they may have had a different proposal if their end result was some sports fields, and I understand that wasn't the intent of what you guys brought forward, but we're dealing with the reality of today and what we can do. So I was just curious on if there was a time frame.
Any more questions, comments?
Great.
I think that might conclude this. Thank you very, very much.
And certainly, as you guys discuss the ILA, we're available for any questions as well.
Okay, now we'll move on.
So just before we move on, I just have one question about Director Haber's request. Are we going to accept the verbal approval of agreeing on a deadline, or are we going to amend the actual ILA?
No, Director Bullock, we would amend the ILA, the current ILA.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll move on down to item 5, and the first item will be the PERC ILA discussion and consideration. To start this, we'll have to have a motion on the ILA.
As the representative for Poulsbo, if it's okay with the board, I'll make this motion to put forward the ILA between Poulsbo and the PFD for the PERC project.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Now discussion. Who would like to start?
Start at the end here, I guess, because I asked the first question. So I think my general take on the ILA is that it is good. I like the fact that there's a dollar cap. I would like to see 2 amendments that I kind of raised in the question. One is the attorney's fees provision, just, again, not anticipating any dispute, but if there is one between PFD about payments, about termination, about anything, prevailing party gets their reasonable attorney's fees and costs. I don't know if there's any issues with that because it's the municipality on one side, but I've also entered into agreements between private parties and municipalities, and those haven't been an issue. So I think it's mutually beneficial, and it's also, you know, I think it keeps everyone honest at the end of the day in terms of, you know, do I really have a case or not? Knowing you may have to not only pay your own attorneys, but pay the other sides. So that's number one. Number 2 would be I do want to have an amendment in here, and I think it's for 2 reasons. One, on this project, it's moving forward, it's great, but I know how deadlines can go, and I just don't want to be in a situation where down the road, you know, these budgets are being based on $20-25, and we're giving a maximum, but I also know that, you know, people come back and say, hey, we're starting later, costs have gone up, can you please give us more? And even if we say no, it just takes away that, you know, that issue of if you have a firm start date, I think that's good to have. And frankly, there's a lot of good projects out there that are waiting in the wings, and tying up $10 million for 2 years, 3 years, 4 or 5 years out, and you know, I think people would look back and go, well, why didn't we do this other project instead? So if everything moves forward on this time frame as they've proposed, I think it's a good project. I agree that it has morphed over time. In part, there are cost issues. There are some other legitimate reasons why it has morphed over time. I guess one concern I have, and I forgot to ask this, is about the parking question that was raised. Is that sufficient for 2 ball fields? I'm assuming Poulsbo's addressed that, and I don't know if that's something we can ask.
Yeah, so certainly parking is something that we're interested in too. So we have some on-site parking, we have on-street parking, and then for the tournaments and for the larger events, we do have verbal commitments or interest in doing shared parking agreements with a number of facilities, including the Olympic College facility as well as Home Depot. So we have actually within very short walking distance many parking lots to choose from to enter into shared parking agreements for our large draw events.
Okay, thank you. So in sum, I think I would propose 2 amendments. One's the attorney's fees one, and then one can be dealt with 1 of 2 ways on the deadline, either saying if they are not under a binding contract with the contractor by that December 2025 date, or construction has commenced by, say, May 1st, 2020, so December 2025, or construction is not commenced by May 1st, 2026, the ILA is terminated, and the district's not responsible for providing any further funds, and any funds paid that are unused up to that point will be refunded back to the PFD.
My preference would be for 31 December of '25 for the city to have signed the contract. Carla talks about how they can control that. They can't control the time period after, whereas contract's awarded and action is over to the contracting company. So I'd feel better setting the date that the city has to meet and then letting it go at that.
Okay, more discussion on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have 2 points. One, I believe historically it's been in all the ILAs that any of the projects that we fund have regular reporting back to this. In fact, in our packets, each time we get that reporting for our previous projects, including the conference center, et cetera. I didn't see that. I may have overseen it, but just a note I had wrote. I didn't go back to double check. And additionally, I think I'm going to bring back up the phase 2. I'd like to see something that pushes the city to need to be on a path by XYZ date or I don't know if it's even feasibility study, whatever type of wording we want to see to move to the next phase so that we're not upsetting like I said earlier, a Bremerton who had some ball fields, and because I know that we ranked this project number 2 as a governing body there. Would that be still that number 2 with today's iteration?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I think that's an excellent point, and something that I've been thinking a lot about as this has gone along. When it was first presented to us, it was a very exciting concept that included not only athletics, but education. And it just seemed to me that it was a project that would serve a very large cross-section of the, not only the county population, but even beyond. And so I think the way that it's moved on today, and I understand the difficulties, it makes it less attractive to me, and I do think that, you know, if the project as it is today was presented back then, it may have been last or second to last with the Bremerton one, and so I think with that said, I'm not going to support this.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to speak to this issue too of just language like just ball fields. In the past, most of our projects have been just ball fields. Our work at the fairgrounds was all centered around fields. Our work with North Kitsap in the past has been focused on Strawberry Field and a field at the high school. It's been our one project at Bremerton that has been center. And so our history is that we've supported fields, and I don't think, as someone who was there for the Bremerton presentation and Poulsbo's presentation back in 2019, that it was based on that it was just ball fields. It was based on the amount of work that had gone into the presentation. It was based on how the facilities at Bremerton had been kept up in our discussion. And so there were all sorts of different factors that came into that decision, rather than just is this fields or not fields.
Okay, thank you. I think Director Leadham, you haven't had input yet.
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. I think what we're looking at for this phase 1, it should be standalone. I don't see how we can tie to phase 2 without having some kind of a penalty. And I realize that right now the situation's landlocked. You guys could look for 10 years and not be able to get adjacent land, and maybe phase 2 and 3 just can't happen. So I stand with just looking at it by itself. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I think that's my worry, right? That we only get phase one, and that's why I'm looking for some type of clawback. Even if it's 10 years down the line, that it can be done. I sit in a place, right? I look at Port Orchard, who's had their Bay Street pedestrian pathway that was conceptualized in 1990, and as a member of City Council, I'm still dealing with it today, right? So I think it creates that urgency for the city to get to work on that project in phase two, because then you get somebody like Kerry Bozeman who can come in here in the city of Bremerton and redevelop their entire waterfront down here, and he was elected mayor in 2001. And that was done before I moved here. Now I know we just got Marina Square here in Bremerton as well, that really was the final piece of that puzzle, but it was essentially done I don't know, in less than 10 or 15 years from start to finish. So I'm trying to provide that incentive, and I do want to address Director Jagodzinski's comments. They're not just ball fields, they're great. I would do anything to bring this facility to my city as well. But point was, it's not what was put up forth in its initial presentation.
Any more comments?
Just responding again about the phase one, phase two, I understand the concern that this was presented as a bigger issue, but I don't know how we tie that in this ILA, which is all about phase one. I don't know, I mean, if, let's say they keep asking the lady who owns that property to the west, hey, we'll buy it, and she's just, I'm not saying she is, but she just says, I want $500 million, you know, and it's just not practical for the city to do it, but they're doing everything they can. I don't know how we write that up, where they're saying, we're doing everything we can to try to do phase two, but it's not like we own the land and they're just sitting on it. We don't even own the land. What do we do? And now they have to repay us for something they don't control. So I don't know how we don't open Pandora's box with something about that.
And I think that's where I'm, again, where my concerns lie, right? That you can't bring that, and then where would we have ranked this project, right? Should we go back and ask all five to get us new iterations today? I don't know that that's fair either, right? So I'm just trying to find the right path forward for that, and that's what I could come up with. I'm hoping that maybe the collective we can come up with that. I don't know those mechanisms or how they exist today.
Okay, do we have any more? Or? Okay, I'll put my input in on it then. On the amendments, for the attorney's fees, I don't know either way. I would hate to be stuck with the other side's attorney fees if we did do something, because attorneys aren't cheap. So that's not that big a deal to me. The start date, I like Director Draper's idea. I like to have a date of when they actually start the project, because they can control that, but nothing else. And at the end of 2027, the city's done no matter what, however it works. And as far as for the second phase, I've always thought of this as a standalone, even from the beginning. We aren't, from what I can see, financially able to assist in phase two, let alone phase three. So I really don't think we should have any input in those phases. If we like the project as it is in phase one, then we should approve it and go from there and not worry about the other phases. That's how I feel. So any other comments on that? Or
I'll say one more thing, Mr. Chairman. For one thing that I like about this ILA is that we are not the ones issuing debt. And so this is something that you have all heard me say repeatedly over and over. So that's one good step. But I also still would want to tell us that we should not pay interest. I really do like the encapsulated number of we're not going to go over this, so that gets us closer to that. But I still think we should be working not only with this project, but with all projects where we have much more control then on how much we're giving towards a project by saying it's going to be $10.5 million, that's what it is, or it's going to be $17 million, that's what it is. But we don't have to do all of the financial planning around interest payments and when those payments happen. At the end of the day, that makes sense if we own the property. That makes sense if we are a financial institution. I think we are a partner who gives money to help these projects happen in our communities, and to make it simpler is easier for us to give more money to more people to plan for it, and we don't need to give the time value of money, which is the norm for all capital projects, I know. But I still want to try and make one last ditch effort at saying, I think to say a number that we're going to give towards projects and not get into bonding and say, here are the years that we can pay. I understand that projects right now have an expectation that they would have that money immediately, but if we set a precedence, then we can control that narrative of, we have $10 million for you, but you're going to receive it this much in 2028, this much in 2029, this much in 2030, where we can plan based on our sales tax revenue of when we give that out. So it's one last ditch effort to say, I'd like to get us out of the time value of money. We give the money now at this date, and we will be responsible for interest on it, rather than an allocated funding model where we say, we'll give $2 million of this 10.5 on this date, on this date, on this date. So that's what I wanted to share, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. There's no more discussion, or is there more discussion?
Do you want me to make my motion for the amendment formally now?
That was my next question. That was for Director Shiplett. So do we have to withdraw the motion for the outright approval, yes or no, to add an amendment if somebody wants to?
No, the original amendment can be amended, and then it can be seconded.
Okay. So you would have to make yours again.
Right. I'll move to amend the ILA in two clauses. One, to add an attorney's fees provision that says, in the event of a dispute between the parties concerning the ILA, the prevailing party would be entitled to recover the reasonable attorney's fees and costs. Second amendment would say, if the construction contract has not been awarded by the city by December 31st, 2025, this ILA shall terminate, and all funding commitments by the district herein shall be released and terminated. Any funds paid to the district to the city that are unused by that termination date of December 31st, 2025 shall be refunded to the district, subject to, I think it's Article 8.6. Basically, the 8.6 is the provision that says if the city's already entered into binding contracts for a certain amount that are already paid for, they don't have to give that back because they would be stuck.
Okay. Did you get that, Director Shiplett? And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Now discussion on this new motion.
I'm in favor of both of those. I don't know that we go all the way enough, so I'm going to add some more after that.
Okay, add some more after.
You have to, procedurally, you have to take a vote.
We have to.
Yes.
Okay, so no more discussion. Okay, all in favor of Director Haver's motion?
Aye.
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 Are we approving the ILA with those two amendments, or just
No,
those two amendments?
just those two amendments.
Yes, that's what I was, we were approving the amendments.
Aye.
Okay. And then we have more amendments to add, correct?
Yeah, I would also like to add an amendment around the reporting structure. I don't have one pre-written as well as Mr. Havers does, so I would defer to the existing reporting structures that have been in our previous ILAs.
Can you give a summary of what those are? Briefly, not to put you on the spot, but
He's referring to the financials like we get a financial report from Kitsap Conference Center every month, and so I would anticipate that once they're up and running, that the Parks and Rec Director will be giving the City Council a financial report, and we receive the same report.
Yeah, I don't know if Brian's on the line. I think we add that because there's a reporting structure that's required based off receiving our funding. Yeah, I'm sure we have to give something to the state.
Yes, I am here, and the reporting requirement has kind of come in two ways. One, in the funding ILA, it's probably a softer reporting, and I can't call up the specifics right now, but once the project is done, we have a follow-up ILA called an operational ILA, and that has operational standards, and that has a much more robust reporting requirement. So if we're just trying to find some language right now to put in this interlocal agreement, which has to do with the creation of the project, we could add a new provision that says that the city will make periodic progress reports to the district on at least and you choose monthly, quarterly, semi-annual basis.
We actually have it in the current ILA that's presented. It says the city will continue to provide status updates to the district director and board at least quarterly and upon reasonable written request.
Okay.
That's in the current one that we're considering, or the current one that's in effect for the current funding?
The current one, the current ILA, the ILA that's in front of you. It's section 5.2.
Nice, perfect. I withdraw that motion. But I would like to then move on to, again, I don't know what that mechanism may look like. Again, it even states in here, well, I'd love to see some kind of center, right? It's in the name, Poulsbo Event and Recreation Center, that is part of that we've at least tried to move that forward. I would give them 15 years even, I think, to be in process of creating phase 2 would be my amendment to this ILA.
Okay, so we can now vote on that amendment also to the ILA.
You'll need a second on that motion.
Yes, so do we have a second? It doesn't appear we have a second.
No, I'll second it.
Oh.
I'll second it.
Okay. So any discussion on the amendment?
Let me make sure.
Better if we would, we just sort of tipped our hat to phase 2, that it's still alive and well some way in the ILA, even though there's nothing enforceable about it, and we're not offering to pay for it or a portion of it, but just so that anybody that wants to take the time to read the ILA knows that it's still on the horizon.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my concern with that is if we put in some flowery language, A, it doesn't have any bite, but B, if some additional funding does come up, now have we endorsed phase 2 and kind of puts them first in line over any other entity that wants to come forward with a new proposal, and now we're back to internal discussions of, well, we really encourage them to do phase 2. Shouldn't we fund this in good faith? I think this is an ILA for phase 1. I mean, we've created a pretty good record here about what our position on phase 2 is, that we'd like it to go forward. I think the city wants it to go forward. I just don't know that we need to memorialize it in phase 1's ILA to say, we strongly encourage, and I don't like the idea of the punishment given what I indicated, that they don't really control the ground that would be necessary.
And I think I'm trying to get that ownership of understanding that and where we are, right? I think we heard, and I'd like to memorialize it because we heard from the circuit, right, who came to us again and again, and this project, talking about the circuit, is moving forward with or without PFD support, and we want this additional monies when we gave them the last monies. Now we hear it may not come to fruition, right? So again, I want some teeth in this stuff, and so that's where this motion comes from.
Okay, more discussion? Okay. Then all in favor of Director Morrissey's amendment to the ILA?
Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed?
Nay.
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 So it appears Director Morrissey's amendment did not pass. So now we'll move back to the original ILA with the 2 amendments that were approved.
Mr. Chairman, I would also like to make an amendment that we would use an allocated funding model based on our financial planners and the City of Poulsbo working together to work out the yearly structure of when to receive these payments rather than the clauses where we are giving a certain amount along with interest by a certain time. I know that's not exact language, but I'm trying to at least act on this.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second because I'd like some clarity. I don't think I understood what it is we would do. And is there anything that talks in this ILA we're looking at tonight that already talks about
There's nothing in this ILA that gives language to what I'm saying. But it is something that we have talked about with our financial planners for a couple of years now, of having a schedule of how we receive our monies from the tax rebate through 2041, where instead of saying that we would give whatever the exact number is here, is it 7.11 million as of construction? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at attachment D, and I actually have it up on the screen as well, it shows you the layout of the funding.
Okay. Thank you. I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn.
And I'd like to say one thing to Director Jagodinski, actually to the rest of you, is that the financial advisors and I are very sensitive to what it is that we can do without compromising the commitments that we've made to City of Port Orchard. That includes the LOU that we have in place and the future of an additional funding to the Kitsap County project if they come and ask for it. So what the city's asking for and what is drafted in this amendment does not put those in jeopardy, and it does give us a framework, financial framework, in which we know when the money is going to be needed and how it's going to be spent, and it's in our financial model that shows that it works.
Okay, so no more amendments to the original motion? In that case, we'll go ahead. All in favor of the ILA with the 2 amendments proposed?
Discuss the current status.
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, the motion does pass and the ILA is approved. And with that, we'll move on to the Board of Directors Handbook update. Director Shiplett.
Just 2 quick things. Been working with Moxie Solutions on putting together a Board of Directors handbook, but it's a very comprehensive handbook. I think we're up to 56 pages right now. Not that I want the board of directors to have to feel like they've got to go through pages and pages and pages of stuff, but it's very important information. It talks about conflict of interest. It talks about sexual harassment. It talks about policies that we currently do not have in place that we need to have in place. As a matter of fact, we'll save on our liability insurance if we have a director's handbook that has got this kind of information together. So the policy committee and I got together in January, and we just had that initial discussion about what are we about? What's the policy committee about? And we came out of that discussion about the first good step to that would be a director's handbook. So that's what we've been working on. So I anticipate that we'll have the final draft ready to present to the policy committee within the next week or two. We'll pull the policy back together again, and then get their take on it, any adjustments we need to make, and then we'll take it to the board for final approval and put it into place. But the work doesn't stop there, because we have an awful lot of policies that we do need to put in place, and each one of those policies will be presented to the board individually from the policy council. Then the last thing I want to say about the policy committee is that it is my recommendation that we assign the vice chair of the PFD board to be the policy committee chair. And the reason why I suggest that is we have 3 committees right now. We have the executive committee is chaired by our chairman. We have our financial committee, which is chaired by our treasurer. And I believe that our policy committee should be chaired by our vice chair. So no matter who the vice chair is, that individual will always be the policy committee chair. So that's my recommendation to the board on that as well.
Okay, thank you. And I think you have the next item also.
I do. In March, I gave our annual report to the county commissioners. It went well. We had a couple of board members that attended by Zoom. They had a few questions, but overall they were pleased. They just really appreciated the fact that we're giving them an annual update on what we're working on. So, and especially with two of our county commissioners being new to the process. So.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, that will conclude the meeting, and the meeting is adjourned.